It's snowing, it's freezing, so is the water temperature. We're about to get on a small boat and go out in the ocean to go look for Harlequin ducks. What could possibly go wrong?
This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. You can hit scan on your radio dial right now, but you're not going to find another show quite like this one this morning. In a moment, I will be dragging your ears out to sea. We're going to the far side of Isle of Ho. Then, we're going to Cherryfield for one of the most unusual bean suppers you've ever been to. I should warn you now, I will be eating 7 bowls of beans. Now, what could go wrong with that? Then we're going to the State House. Every time there is a controversial initiative in the ballot, like last year's bear referendum, there is a flood of bills in the legislature the following year. This year, it's a monsoon. Never mind the little law changes, there are at least 8 proposals to amend the Maine Constitution. All of them trying to fix whatever seems to have gone wrong last year. We'll stick our nose into a couple of those in just a few minutes. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Dysarts, EBS, Doors Equipment, and Napa Auto Parts. We start the show on the pier in Stonington. For the 3rd year in a row, the Island Heritage Trust has teamed up with the Isle of Ho Ferry to offer a unique trip. One of the most colorful ducks in North America is also one of the hardest to find. The Harlequin duck is named after the brightly colored, clown-like characters that were an Italian comedy tradition in the theater centuries ago. Harlequins breed on the raging whitewater rivers of northern Canada. It's a hostile environment, and there aren't many of these ducks, but they like it rough. A few of them come down and spend the winter along the Maine coast, feeding in the pounding surf where no other bird dares to go. For decades, the biggest concentration of these wintering ducks in eastern North America is along the south edge of Isle of Ho. We're going out to see them and lots of other waterfowl along the way. I am the official spotter in this boat. There are about 30 people with me, almost all Mainers, since no Flatlander is going out onto a winter ocean on a small boat in a falling snow. Seriously, are you nervous?
No, nothing. We're with you. I'm not worried. I want to see a dovekey. Think you can do that?
No. I don't think I can.
I would probably believe if it was a mirror far away, I would think it was a dovekey. So.
Got any targets?
Yeah, the islands in the wintertime, and the Harlequins.
Let's get started.
I'm Mike Little, and I'm with the Island Heritage Trust, and I want to welcome you all to our, I believe it's our 3rd annual duck cruise. We've had, the Harlequins have been here every year. We've been a little later than this other years, so they should be out there, and we'll look for anything else we can find. Bob Duchesne, here to help us answer questions. If there's something you don't know about a bird, ask Bob.
Captain Garrett Aldrich.
It should be a calm day. We had really, really flat waters this morning. The wind's just starting to pick up a little bit, but I think we're going to squeeze this in pretty good. We got snow, so but not blinding snow, so that's good.
We've left the dock. We're heading out. It took us almost 4 hours to do this trip. It'll take you just 5 minutes.
11:40, just left the dock. The wind is not really up yet, just the beginnings of a trickle. Fairly calm seas inside. The sun is actually poking through the clouds, which is poking through the snow. Almost noon. Just had our first harbor seal pop up. We're not past the initial islands yet, but we're making good progress. So far, I would estimate it about 20 eiders, 18 long-tailed ducks, 1 redneck grebe, 1 black guillemot, 1 red-breasted merganser. Black guillemots have started to kick in. We got probably 8 total so far. 1 more 1 redneck grebe. Got a quick flyby. Harlequins. Okay, we've had 4 harlequin ducks on a flyby. As I said, another flock of red-breasted mergansers, probably about 5. Now 12:15. We can add 4 more long-tailed ducks. We can add 1 more common loon. The sun is still shining through the clouds and it's still snowing. Go figure. We've been underway for just about an hour. We get out to the ledges. We've actually gone up the east side of Isle of Ho, and we usually go up the west side. On this side of Isle of Ho, there's a ledge that is covered in purple sandpipers. There's about 110 by my count. This is a bird that nests way up in the Arctic, but spends its winters in Maine. A large part of the world's population is hidden along our shores. And if you didn't know what to look for, you wouldn't even know they were there. But these guys were standing right in the snow. And I've never seen that happen before. So many of them perch right there. A couple of Harlequin ducks just around the ledge area, so we were after those when we got them. We're now proceeding off to another ledge to see what's there. Leaving Big Spoon Island, did very well. Picked up, let's see, one flock of 5, one flock of 3 Harlequin ducks. This island was covered in gulls. There were great blackbacks everywhere, plus a myriad of herring gulls. There's a ledge here with great cormorants on it. We're going to circle around, get in for a closer look. Great cormorants nest on Seal Island. It's the southernmost colony of nesters in the eastern United States.
Right along the ledge there, we're going to kind of work our way over there slowly, but keep your eye on them.
20. There they go.
The great cormorants were on White Horse Island, and we're now on Black Horse Island. And on the backside of this, at least 20 Harlequin ducks are all gathered up. They're not letting us get too close, though. Just about 2 o'clock, we're still in the south end of Isle of Howe. This trip's going to go over to overtime because we've been doing so well. A lot of Harlequin ducks, just picked up 2 more red-breasted mergansers. We're circling back to the east side of the island again and probably going to start to head for home soon, but we picked up a lot of Harlequin ducks so far. No, it's a white-winged scoter. White-winged scoter. White-winged scoter. Coming back into Stonington Harbor at the conclusion of a very successful trip.
Okay, that was quick. That's the appetizer for today's show. Altogether, over 100 Harlequin ducks were out there. For bird lovers, we also got a whole bunch of common eiders, over 100 purple sandpipers, 50 long-tailed ducks, 26 black guillemots, 24 common loons, 11 red-breasted mergansers, 7 great cormorants, 4 white-winged scoters and 4 surf scoters, about 4 common golden eyes, 5 redneck grebes, maybe 1 horned grebe, a few buffleheads, and another rarity. We nearly ran over a thick-billed murre. He just sat there and watched us watch him. This is a relative of the puffin that nests up off the coast of Newfoundland, and just a few of them get into our waters in winter. In my life, I've seen maybe half a dozen. We got a few harbor seals and about 30 gray seals. All in all, a great day out on the winter ocean. The Isle of Howe Ferry is a non-profit that carries passengers and mail back and forth to the island, but also provides a lot of adventure trips in summer. Several times this summer, it'll be going out to visit the puffins on Seal Island, about 17 miles out to sea. You can read about it at isleofhowe.com. If you go, you'll probably see me. I'm Bob Duchesne, and this is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. Up next, the only bean supper I've ever been to that featured ukuleles. Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. The next few minutes of today's show are among the oddest ever featured on this program. First, this story has a backstory. Proof that Maine is really just a big, small town. A couple of months ago, I got a Facebook friend request from Arthur Teenan. I said to myself, well, I know Glenn Teenan, who runs Eastland Motel in Lubec. I've known Lois Teenan for decades. She used to run the airline diner on Route 9 and still makes the best pies on the planet. You may argue that Helen's Restaurant in Machias has the best pies, but I'm going to insist you try both before deciding. I was even aware that some of the most interesting sections of the Maine Ice Age Trail in Cherryfield are on Teenan family property, so I clicked accept. Almost immediately, I got a message from Arthur asking me if I would like to judge a bean supper contest in Cherryfield. It turns out Arthur listens to this show, knows I adventure down east a lot, and figured I'd take the bait. He was right, he had me at bean supper. But there was more to the story. About 3 years ago, a bunch of townspeople and businessmen decided they had to do a little more to put Cherryfield on the map, and a project called Destination Cherryfield was born. You'll learn more about it in a moment. But another unique feature of this particular bean supper and competition was that it came with strings attached. The University of Maine Machias Ukulele Club. 8 ukuleles, a rhythm section, a valve trombone that I've actually never seen before, a saw, some super kazoos, and a repertoire that included the Beatles. I'm telling you, Destination Cherryfield is taking bean suppers to a whole new level when your ukulele band can go from the Beatles to Andy Griffith. Wait, more proof Maine is a small town. I told Representative Robert Alley of Jonesport that I was going to judge a baked bean competition in his legislative district, and he said, I like beans. So they signed him up as a judge, and then got Representative Will Toole of East Machias. And there we were, a bipartisan group of state representatives, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, judging beans in Cherryfield to the sound of ukuleles. Where else in the world are you going to get that? One problem, we didn't actually have any rules for this contest. So first job, figure out what the criteria were and how to keep score.
Now, guys, I don't know. As long as everybody's on the same page. I don't know how you're going to, it's a personal thing.
Well, I think we can make it up now.
Yeah. And as long as you're all doing the same thing, I mean, we're going to have a little bit of criteria. Obviously, the first one is taste.
Oh, yeah.
1 through 10. Texture, yeah. Originality.
Yeah, originality. Good one. We'll put that number 1. I'm sure they'll be great.
Well, when you have beans, what is it you like about them?
I like the taste of them.
Taste, what's yours?
I like the texture of them. I like the, how super they are or whatever, or how thick they are. And I just myself, I love beans.
Yeah.
I grew up on them.
Yeah.
And I could eat them, I could say 3 meals a day.
Well, my town had a town meeting today, and we had a bean lunch afterwards.
Yeah.
So by the time today is over,
You won't be wired.
don't any of you pull my finger.
Don't pull the trigger.
So,
So I'm sitting there with Representative Robert Alley of Jonesport. I don't know beans about beans, but it's obvious he does. He's picking out the flavor of each ingredient and telling what kind of beans were used, how much molasses, identifying some of the secret ingredients. So, Robert, what makes a good baked bean dinner?
Oh, you got to have pork in them. You got to have molasses in them. You got to have a little brown sugar. And you got to have a little bit of love when you put them together.
Yep, but you knew what the beans were. You could figure out how much pork was in there. I mean, you knew your stuff. Is that an acquired skill?
Well, probably. My grandmother, both grandmothers used to be excellent cooks, and Saturday night it was bean night, and you knew it. And they could put them together, and you always found that pork in there all nice and cuddled into the corner of them, and you see that little shine on the top of them, and they had a flavor that was unbelievable. And tonight I found come pretty close to it right over to that table.
I guess one of them had maple syrup in it. Did you reckon?
Did.
You figure out which one that was?
That was our second one.
It was? Yeah, that's the one I picked as the winner. I'm apparently a sucker for that.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it was something that I wouldn't mind doing every year for them.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get together next year and do it.
There we go. I'll be an expert by then. If you've just joined us, it may not sound like it, but this is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. This part of the show is coming to you from the Down East Baked Bean Challenge and Supper at the Cherryfield American Legion last weekend. We're breaking for beans and pie at the moment, but coming up, we'll get to the point of this show. Yes, there is a point. What is Destination Cherryfield? And what's it got to do with outdoor fun and adventure? Arthur Teenan joins me next on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8 on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. We're at the Cherryfield American Legion, where I've just been the judge for a baked bean competition. The University of Maine Machias Ukulele Club is providing the entertainment. Arthur Teenan helped dream this up for something called Destination Cherryfield. So, welcome to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, Arthur.
Well, Bob, thank you for being here. It was a lot of fun, and I know you enjoy down East Maine, and I thought you'd be a good fit.
Yep, I do. I just love it down here. After 7 bowls of beans, though, I don't think I can trust a fart for the next couple of days.
I wouldn't want to ride home with you.
No, I know it. Destination Cherryfield. What is it, and how did it come to be?
Well, it's a small group right now of citizens here in town, some business owners, and just some interested citizens. We've gotten together to advocate for Cherryfield and support the town and to make Cherryfield a destination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there must be a bunch of people sitting around saying, this is a great place, how come nobody knows about it?
And I think that's true in all of down East Maine.
It really is.
And I got into the tourism business a little bit a couple of years ago, and then as I did my research, and when I found out Acadia gets 24% of the tourist dollars every year in the state of Maine, and Washington County gets 2%.
Yeah, there's something wrong with this equation.
Yeah, and we're so close to them, but we need to get the word out.
Yeah. No slight to Acadia, but God, I love it up here.
Yeah, it is special, and actually for me, when I started in the tourism thing a little bit, kind of opened my own eyes. I looked at stuff from a different perspective. When you grow up, when you look at something every day, it's amazing what you don't see.
Yeah. It's like living in Washington, D.C. and never going to the Washington Monument.
Exactly,
Yep. So, destination for who? Who do you think you would like to get here? A piece of that Bar Harbor traffic, or do you want to get Harrington to come over, or what?
Well, one thing I've pushed is educating people who are traveling to Maine that they can get on 95 down in Boston after breakfast and have lunch in Washington County.
Yeah.
And they do that by 95, and I'm advocating for the extension of the 395 on the Route 9. Mm-hmm. So they could come 95, 395, Route 9, right into Washington County, bypass all that stuff.
All that congestion.
Yeah.
I won't go to Acadia in the summer if I can avoid it.
No, it's tough. And know, if somebody gets on Route 1 in southern Maine, they can't hardly, in July or August, they can't hardly get to Washington County in a day.
And the worst thing is they don't even know what's up here.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Yeah. So once somebody gets to Destination Cherryfield, what are they going to find once they get here?
Well, one thing I've worked hard with, and several others, is Cherryfield is a gateway for the Bold Coast Scenic Byway, which I think is going to be a tremendous asset to Washington County. And then if you look at a map of Cherryfield, we have the Down East Ice Age Trail.
Yes.
We have the Down East Sunrise Trail, the longest ATV trail system in the country, ties into that trail. We have the Maine Wine Trail comes into Cherryfield. The Down East Fisheries Trail comes into Cherryfield. We're really a hub. Cherryfield is really uniquely located for a lot of different activities to appreciate everything that Washington County has to offer.
Yeah, if there were one drawback, there's not a lot of places to stay.
That is absolutely the number one problem is lodging, and something I've tried to advocate for, and we'll continue to work on that. And part of that problem is we're so seasonal.
Yeah, it really is. In fact, that's what's fascinating about doing this activity in the dead of winter. It looks like Destination Cherryfield is going to be more than just a summer event.
Oh yes, we did our Riverside Arts and Crafts Festival for the first time last October, and we picked the first rainy weekend for almost 2 months. But we considered it a success. We're going to do it again this year. But we want to give people a reason to come to Cherryfield.
Well, even Bar Harbor rolls up the sidewalks in winter.
Absolutely.
But Cherryfield is just a different part of the planet altogether, because you do have a nexus of snowmobiling here that can happen in certain areas. You've still got that Sunrise Trail where something is always going on that Sunrise Trail year-round. Yeah,
that's a great asset, and at this point, I believe, and actually the whole area, also what we have close here is the Donnell Pond, Spring River Lake, Maine Public Reserve land, which is just a beautiful area. And all of these things that I've mentioned are underutilized and undermarketed.
Yes, they are. And I fight with the Maine Office of Tourism about this pretty regularly.
Yes, yeah. I've had some discussions with some of those folks, and I went to one meeting, and I typically not afraid to say what I think. I try to be polite, and I had half the room kind of silently clapping, and I had the other half of the room staring at me like,
Well, is there anyone from Washington County who is afraid to say what they think?
I haven't met him yet.
No, I know. That's it from Cherryfield. My thanks to Arthur Teenan for the interview and for inviting me to judge the Down East Baked Bean Challenge, putting Cherryfield on the map. We switch gears now and go to the State House in Augusta. Mike Shaw is House Chair of the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee. He's one of many legislators who have introduced bills because of last year's bear referendum. With Mike is David Trahan of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine. LD 913, the Species Management Education Fund. That's your bill, but I understand you're sponsoring on behest of Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine.
That is correct.
Which is cool, because I've got a bill coming to your committee that George Smith has me sponsoring. So this is how citizens and groups participate in the democratic process all the time.
Absolutely.
So.
I actually have one of George Smith's bills myself, too.
Yeah, you'll live to regret that.
I'm sure I will.
So LD 913, it establishes a Species Management Education Fund. So let's start with why.
We need a fund for educational purposes at the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife so that we can get the word out to the citizens of the state of Maine as to exactly what IF&W is doing for them and for the state.
Now, this would put a $1 fee on every license in order to pay for it, so at least you do have that funding mechanism.
There is a funding mechanism, and in fact, not only would we raise the money from the dollar on each license, but we would also get most likely a substantial federal match.
Mm-hmm. So we would be able to leverage some federal money in order to make this program really work.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm always in favor of getting our own tax money back from the feds.
That's a good thing.
Now, what is it we're trying to educate exactly? Have you got a picture in your mind about what it is we're going to teach and who we're going to teach it to?
There's a whole host of areas that we can help educate the citizens in regards to what Inland Fisheries and Wildlife does. Wildlife management is a major component of the bill. People need to know that we have a very experienced team of biologists studying various species, and not only game animals, but also non-game. We have biologists studying bats and reptiles and deer and everything. Birds, everything out there, absolutely. Some of the other major components I think we could educate people better on would be land for Maine's future. We find wide support for the Land for Maine's future and the funding mechanisms, but I think a lot of times people would love to hear about what it is exactly that we're getting for that money. We have a big project that is supposed to be funded up by Bingham, the Forks, called Cold Stream.
Oh, yes,
and
yeah. That's way cool.
It's a huge area for deer wintering and also some of the best brook trout habitat in the entire state.
Well, surely no one would withhold LMF funding for that.
Oh, surely not.
People need to have a full understanding of what management means. If we're going to occupy the same space as critters, we got to adjust to each other. In the management scheme, we have to adjust the numbers of how some of the critters are in the landscape, and then we adjust our own behavior. So we have to adjust our behavior with protecting deer wintering yards, as an example. And sometimes we have to manage the predation that happens in some of the species that mean something significant to our economy. So this dynamic is going on all the time, but we never tell the public much about it.
Right, and that's exactly what this bill is all about.
Mm-hmm. So how would the education work? Are you thinking classrooms? Are you thinking publications? Are you thinking social media?
All of the above.
So what's the price tag for this? If we do it, I mean, you must have a figure. If we do $1 on every license, and you know how many dollars are coming in, what do you think is the revenue that's going to take to do it?
I think I'll pass the microphone off to
David Trahan.
David Trahan from the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine.
We'll take a break while Mike is passing the mic. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. We're in the office of Mike Shaw, chair of the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee of the Maine Legislature. He is sponsoring a bill for the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine. A lot of bills have been introduced this session in the wake of last year's bear referendum, and quite a few proposals to amend the Maine Constitution. We'll get to one of those later in the show, too. Back in a moment on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket with Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. It happens every time. Whenever there is a really controversial citizens initiative in the ballot in the fall, a whole bunch of bills get introduced into the Maine legislature the following year. Most try to put limits on what can qualify for the ballot or how signatures are gathered. After the bear referendum last year, there are also a bunch of bills to help the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife do more marketing and education. Mike Shaw, a Democrat from Standish, has introduced one for the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine, who is led by David Trahan, who is sitting right here. Welcome back, David. This is your second time on Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and thanks for deferring this question to me, Representative. One of the things that we learned just recently during the bear referendum was the credibility, the knowledge that the department has is supported by most of the Maine people. Around 90% of the people that we polled during that referendum said biologists in department, game wardens, and others, we trust them. So we believe, and one of the reasons the thrust behind this bill was that if the general public believes and trusts these individuals, that's likely earned. It's because they're doing a good job managing our wildlife. But very few people are hearing from them. So we wanted in this legislation to mandate to the department that they come up with an education plan for every component of what they do with Maine wildlife. We believe that at SAM that the general public benefits from understanding wildlife management, understanding the animals around them, how to protect them, the very foundation of conservation, passing on wildlife to the next generation and how valuable that is. So for us, the money component of it we looked at, we wanted all the department programs to be covered in this mandate. We suspect that'll be somewhere around $400,000, about what is collected through the fee increase. The federal matching money we know is going to be there. We want that federal money to reinforce those conservation programs that we're educating the public about. We have wildlife management areas that need work. We have restoration projects for brook trout and other wildlife that could use some extra funding from the federal government. Pittman-Robertson dollars in particular, a lot of that will come back for education for the department, but also to spend on the ground in management programs. So it's a win-win from every direction.
When you think about this, do you think the intent is mostly to educate non-sportsmen who are maybe less aware, or do you find that a lot of sportsmen aren't fully aware of everything the department does too?
I think it's both. I think that as we get further away from farms, people's interaction with animals changes, and they're easily confused on why wildlife management is important. Those city folks, you might want to call them, I think it's extremely valuable for them. But what I found is these very same city folks that some sportsmen see as a detriment are actually, when they're educated, are the strongest advocates for wildlife, just like sportsmen. Now, both groups can be advocates for wildlife.
Just one big ecosystem out there, and you can't have a discussion of one without the other. All right, well, Mike's got the microphone back again. Wouldn't we get the most bang for the buck if we just spent it all in Cumberland County?
Good question. No, I don't think so. Just like David said, we're going to use this money to educate all the citizens of Maine, sportsmen and non-sportsmen alike.
You think IF&W wants this job? What's your discussion been with them so far?
They do want it, definitely, and David Trahan may have some more insight on that, too.
Yeah, you must have talked to him, David.
Yeah, I've had lengthy discussions with Judy Camuso and others within the department, Rick LaFlamme, who does landowner relations. All of them are in need of funding to assist them in their programs. Rick, with the landowner relations program in particular, really impresses me. He's gung-ho about building relations between sportsmen and others and landowners. That's key to what we all want to do in the future. Judy Camuso, in our world, she's a rock star. She's a lady who came from the non-consumptive community. She doesn't hunt. She's not a consumer of wildlife, yet she completely understands conservation and its value and why.
All of it. She's like one of the most impressive people in the department I've met in a long time.
Yeah, that lady is going places, and we fully support what she's doing, whether it be protecting bald eagles or managing bears. She's all over it, and she's terrific. So we're expecting her to really give a lot of guidance on wildlife investment.
Well, terrific. Stakeholders group is envisioned in all this. The last part of the bill says a stakeholder group will come together in order to direct a 5-year marketing or an education plan. I guess my first question is, who gets to be on it? Do anti-hunting groups get to be on it?
I think we'll have a diverse group of people on that, including legislators. I would certainly advocate for a group such as the Audubon of Maine, non-consumptive users, hunting groups, Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine. So we'll probably define that later.
Well, great. Well, thank you for asking me to be on it, and I'll check my schedule and see if I can.
There you go. One thing that I'd like to say also is when thinking about the landowner relations in Maine, one thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is access to private lands for hunting. But it's not all about that. It's also access to private lands for people that enjoy non-game activities, such as bird watching, which I know is right up your alley.
Absolutely.
If you go to a section of land that you know has a great abundance of birds or any other wildlife that you want to see, and you run across all no trespassing signs, it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
And the landowner relations program helps establish relationships with landowners to allow for public access. So these are very important issues for all Mainers, not just sportsmen.
And I am absolutely guilty, because I will take bird watching tours on a private forest land up west of Baxter State Park, where there are a lot of cool birds, and I'm tromping on skidder trails, moving my van over so a logging truck can get by. That's me. So it's a 5-year public outreach campaign. What's the vision for the planning, and why 5 years? You want to give that one back to David?
Yeah, sure. I think that one of the things that we do at the legislature, or I was a legislator myself, is we respond to crisis. And once that fire's out, we move on to something else.
Well, he's on to us.
I know that's true, because I served here. And when it comes to education, I think anyone who's participated in education knows the value is that you build a foundation over time by educating whether it's children or the public about wildlife. You can't just do it one year and then not do it the next. You have to do it every single year. We envision that this will be a 5-year plan to get the program established, get the education programs themselves, the administration of them in place, do the outreach, build the confidence of the public. But we envision this not being a 5-year plan, being a 50-year plan, a 100-year plan.
Well, it should be a habit at some point.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Any last thoughts on your bill?
I hope for the committee to do a unanimous ought to pass report.
That's Mike Shaw, chair of the legislature's Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee, introducing a bill on behalf of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine to help Maine's wildlife biologists do more education. It's one of many bills being considered this year. Some of them would actually change the Maine Constitution. We'll take a close look at one of those next as Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine continues on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. After last year's bear referendum, and with the threat of more to come, there's a large number of proposed constitutional amendments this year that would make it harder or stop it outright from happening again. It takes a 2/3 vote of the legislature and a majority vote of the Maine citizens to make it happen. It would have to be a pretty darn good bill to get on the ballot. Representative Michelle Dunphy of Old Town has one of those ideas. So, welcome to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine.
Good morning, Bob. How are you today?
I've been better. All right, your bill, LD 1084, proposes an amendment to the Constitution to exclude wildlife issues from citizen initiatives. Is this about bears?
That's where the thought came from, yes.
That's where everybody's thought came from. I guess every action has an equal and opposite reaction. There are so many constitutional amendments and so many bills in the legislature right now to address what people think went wrong with the initiative process. When you thought about what was my solution going to be, how did you arrive at this conclusion?
Well, it was obvious on Election Day to me when I was standing at the polls that mostly everybody coming in was talking about the bear referendum. And it was very divisive at times, and people were commenting on the money. And I think in a larger picture, you could say that about the discussions that were being had statewide. that it's divisive for a number of reasons, and it is expensive.
I had the same situation because we're both in the Maine state legislature and we have adjacent districts. And I was standing at the polls in Milford, and the number of people coming in to vote in camo was right off the charts. It's like people. It's not just about the bear issue. I think it was the fact that somebody from out of state brought a whole lot of money in, brought out of state petition gatherers in, and paid them to influence our political process. And even if you didn't care about bears, that annoyed a lot of people.
I agree. I think it did. The out-of-state money coming in, and the fact that we also have a public process in place that works. And I think additionally it was bringing an answer to a question that had not yet been asked. And I think people, were up in arms about that.
They were. They were in my area, I'll tell you that. Well, it's a ripe topic. There's so many constitutional amendments about this issue. I was reading them over. There's another one to exclude hunting and fishing. There's 2 to exempt traditional hunting methods, which is really funny because if traditional hunting methods included dynamiting fish or any things that someday we might find repugnant, a constitutional amendment would make it more difficult for the people to change their minds on it. But there's one constitutional amendment that says wildlife law that is passed by initiative only applies to the counties that it's passed in. So sure, you can vote against bear trapping in Portland, but if Piscataquis County didn't agree with you, then they wouldn't have to follow the law. That's a funny one. There's one that says you have to get 5% of signatures from each county, which theoretically would demonstrate statewide support. 2 would establish a right to hunt and fish, including with traditional methods. Do you have any view on which one is best?
Well,
yours is.
Clearly mine is.
Well, I would agree. I mean, yours is unique in one way, in that it's not just hunting and fishing. Yours is wildlife management.
Yes, wildlife. And I think when I was thinking of the title, I wanted to be inclusive. Because you can say hunting and fishing, but is trapping hunting? I think it needs to be very clear and concise, and I do like the simplicity of my bill. I also like the bills that establish the right to hunt and fish.
Yeah, I've had your husband, Matt Dunlap, on the show before, and when we talk about establishing rights, there seems to be some kind of an obligation created by that right. The state is supposed to protect your ability to do it, which complicates things a little bit. If you have a right to hunt, do you have any kind of new rights to go on my land, or be provided with the means of doing so, or are you now entitled to some kind of a license under certain circumstances? When you look at the actual solutions, you wonder, what can of worms did I just open?
It does leave it open-ended, and it does raise more questions. That's where I think the committee process comes into play. They can, work that out and establish the boundaries of that.
Well, this would be unique. Citizens have an almost unlimited right to petition for a law, and this would really be the first major limitation. What do you think about that?
Well, there is currently a limitation. You cannot propose by citizen initiative. For example, you cannot propose a constitutional amendment. Having this type of limitation at this time will forestall the divisive and expensive debates. And I think it's also interesting in that, if mine were approved, it would be voter approved.
Well, that's the big thing, I guess. First of all, the citizens right now under the Constitution can't petition for a constitutional amendment. The only way they can enact something like what you're proposing is if the legislature gives them the opportunity to do that, and even that takes a 2/3 vote, so it would have to have a lot of broad bipartisan participation to do it. So you get a constitutional amendment in front of the citizens by the only way you can currently do it, and give them the choice. And then the second part of what you just said is the citizens themselves would be the people who are making a limitation on their rights under the Constitution. If the citizens, by vote, decide that they want to limit the ability to bring wildlife issues to a ballot petition, they can.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the interesting things with this proposal.
Well, yours is more than just hunting and fishing, as we mentioned. It is about wildlife management. And I'm trying to think, what other things would ever come forward from the citizens that would not be about hunting and fishing? And I had to stretch. I was thinking, well, let's see, the citizens under this could not petition to pass a law to protect the bald eagle. But none of the situations I came up with ever made sense, so I relaxed on it. When you go in front of the committee, what is it you're going to be telling in your testimony on why we should be passing this?
I think because we have a public process in place currently that works. We have public working groups, we have committees, we have the legislature. We have a system that works, and I think in Maine we clearly trust our biologists to set management goals. I think it's also a divisive issue with urban versus rural. It caused a great divide when we should be trying to work together towards the economy and towards jobs and education. And those are the things I'm going to talk about and why I think this is important to do.
It'd be fun to just go over the other proposals because we can compare them to yours and explain why they're worse. And I'm looking at the one, let's see. We talked about establishing a right and what complications that can lead to. There's one amendment that says wildlife law passed by initiative only applies to the counties that passed it.
Yeah, that seems complicated.
Well, I mean, the theory behind that is you can have laws that apply in one part of the state but not the other.
And what do you do with, territories that overlap for game wardens?
Yeah.
How do you know exactly where you are when you want to shoot a deer? Mm-hmm. I think while I, at first glance, kind of like the idea because it does let the people speak to their districts, I do find it would be rather complicated and probably nearly impossible to enforce in some situations.
Yeah, and furthermore, I know when I've crossed the line from Sagadahoc into another county. If I'm up at the Golden Road, I don't know when I cross the county line.
Exactly. Or if you're in the woods, you know where you are, you're not getting lost, but you don't always know. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of gray areas, and I think that could be problematic.
Yeah. There's one that says you have to get 5% of signatures from each county. That one, I think, gets right to the heart of what you just said. There's so much heartburn in the state about southern Maine imposing its will on northern Maine, and that if you're going to have a statewide law forced by citizens, by golly, there ought to be some kind of demonstration of statewide support.
Yeah, I do like that one better than the last one. I like having the people be able to speak to their area and carrying as much weight in Portland as it would in Eagle Lake. I like that.
If you've got something you think should be a state law, by golly, you ought to find somebody in Aroostook County who agrees with you.
Yes.
Now, I can't even read the tea leaves on what the politics are going to be like on this because it is a north-south divided issue as much as anything else. So when you look at the political landscape, what are you preparing yourself for?
Well, I think, as we said before, it's already a divisive issue. And I think it's divisive for a number of reasons. The money, the politics of it. There's also going to be a question of whether this could be perceived as voter suppression. But again, that goes back to people would approve this.
Yeah.
So it's their voice. I think the public has spoken over time with efforts to change hunting and fishing wildlife laws. I think it was 1935, there was an attempt to get rid of hunting licenses. And then when we established the moose hunt, and there was an effort to repeal that and change that. And then we've had the two bear referendums, 2004 and 2014. I think those issues have already shown and illustrated that the public is in support of our own wildlife management.
Yeah. I guess when I think about the carve-out, what citizens would impose on themselves as a limitation on their right to petition, there have been several broad categories that we keep fighting over and over every few years, and it was marriage equality for a while. It seems to have been settled. But even that was a north-south issue. More conservative northern Maine wasn't so comfortable with it. Southern Maine, a little more liberal in Portland. A lot of votes came from there to impose this statewide. So you've got that. We always had the Taxpayer Bill of Rights that we had like 3 initiatives in a row.
Yeah, those were very divisive. In the casino.
Yep, casino's another one. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So there are certain issues we fight over and over. And I wonder, will there be energy for other carve-outs as well later on? And the fact is, anytime we have one of those fights, there were bills just like this that tried to do the same thing, and none of them actually succeeded either.
Yeah.
But there's a precedent for protecting wildlife and inland fisheries and wildlife in the Constitution because we protected the hunter revenue, the hunter license revenue. So it can happen. I mean, this is, at the end of the day, a democracy, and we get to decide what we want.
Yeah, and that's the wonderful thing about our process. It is a democracy. And even when you lose a fight, you still have to keep in mind we are in a democracy, and that's what we want.
And that's where we'll leave it. Representative Michelle Dunphy of Old Town has been my guest, talking about her proposal for an amendment to the Maine Constitution. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Dysarts, EBS, Doors Equipment, and Napa Auto Parts. We'll be back next Saturday at 9 a.m. and Sunday morning at 8 a.m. If you want to hear this show again or hear old shows or share any with anybody, it's on the web at 929theticket.com. This is Sports Radio 929 The Ticket.